Small business war stories. Small businesses are the soul of America. And this is where they tell their stories. I am your host, Pablo Fuentes. Hey, lovers of small businesses and good stories in general. Welcome to Small Business War Stories. And today I had the opportunity to sit down with Nick Boettcher. And Nick is a repeat guest. He was on the show in the past. He works at Austin Vintage Guitars here in Austin, Texas. And he also has a band called The Reverend Few. And Nick is somebody who is very inspiring to me. He's an amazing musician. And actually, do wait until the end of this podcast. He sings and plays one of his original songs, which is beautiful and amazing and powerful. I literally had goosebumps and I had a knot in my throat listening to the song. It's that good and that powerful. So that is at the very end of the episode. But we talk a lot about life, and we talk a lot about how we, as people, and we talk about it in the context of music, but this applies to every aspect of life and small businesses. We tend to get in our own way, and a lot of times we are our own biggest obstacle to accomplishing things. So this is, a really good episode where we addressed a lot of topics that him and I sit down and talk about. Every so often here, sit down for a beer in Austin. Today we did it over a glass of whiskey and some soda water with a dash of beautiful original music played on a guitar here live in Austin, Texas at the very end. I'd love to hear what you think about the podcast. Go check out our website at smallbusinesswarstories.com and let us know. And as usual, we appreciate it when you subscribe and leave us reviews on iTunes or whatever it is your preferred platform for podcast. Without further ado, let's get into today's episode with Nick Boettcher in Austin, Texas. And we are live here in beautiful Austin, Texas. And today I have the pleasure and honor to sit down with a past guest. This is our second past guest, revisit ever, Nick Boettcher. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Pablo. It is so great.
Yeah,
to be
cheers.
Here.
And
cheers.
It's here a Friday evening in Austin, and we have some Colorado whiskey here and some Austin sparkling water. So,
what is that whiskey? That's good stuff.
Stranahan's Colorado whiskey. It's good stuff. It's barley whiskey.
I like it.
So, you were on the show the last time, and we talked about the music business. We talked about your adventures working with Austin Vintage Guitars and with your own band, The Reverend Few.
Yeah.
It's been a long time. It's been like a year and a half, at least.
Yeah.
A lot of things have happened, so I wanted to revisit some of those things with you and touch upon some of the things that we've been talking about. Recently, you and I, we get together and we discuss things, but one of the things we've been talking about is how the creative struggle and getting in your own way and how we all do that. So why don't we we can talk a little bit about as an update about what's going on with you, with your band, with everything that's happening, and then I'd love to touch upon that because I think it's especially for people who are setting out on their own, it's such a scary thing to face the blank page every day, and we do so much to hinder ourselves from succeeding. And I think I've never met anybody who has been able to not experience that, but I've met many people who are able to be aware of it and overcome it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. The blank page is an analogy. It works on so many different things, whether it be like just trying to write a song and feeling stuck, feeling inspired to actually sit down and write a song, or feeling the pressure of having to sit down and I guess it's all involving sitting down at some point. But that's taking the time to sit and focus and go, what do I really need to accomplish? And what's interesting too is as we think about this and we discuss it, the people that I know that do the best are always the ones that don't think about it too hard. The analysis doesn't come until way later in the game. Meeting players that have been really successful. There's a guy that came in to Austin Vintage where I occasionally work. been very successful band. And he's asking me these what seemed like remedial questions about amps and guitars and things. And I was a little surprised, and I give him all the information I can give. And I was a little surprised to see that his experience of these instruments, and then with all the success he had, and writing songs and playing great solos and singing, and he just didn't really know that much about things that I thought at one point were so important in the big picture. And his approach was always just like, grab a guitar, plug it in. I don't know, that's good. Sit down, play, make music. Like just dive in and do the thing that you think that you want to do, and don't worry about it.
That applies way beyond music, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, starting a podcast. I have all these dreams and aspirations of doing all sorts of things, including having a podcast, and I have all the equipment. I'm carving out the time in my schedule and getting things ready. And the most challenging thing is just literally sitting down and putting the microphone in front of me, hitting the record button, and doing it. Like, that's the hardest part.
Which is kind of what we did today. I mean, we were hanging out, talking about guitars and talking about the blues and talking about other things.
Absolutely. And you were like, let's do a podcast. And I was like, yes, that's...
well, you started saying some really interesting stuff. I'm like, we got to get this down on tape.
Oh, man. Get red light fever at that point, though. Oh, no. That's funny.
Red light fever, never heard. Is that a studio term?
Yeah, studio term where, like, you could play great, you could sing great, whatever you're doing, and as soon as you hit that button and that red light comes on, it changes everything. And it's true, You either try too hard, or you get caught up in the idea that if you're just recording, there's an element of permanence to it, and without it, there's no real repercussions if you screw something up. But the truth of the matter is, you can always edit now. I mean, we prefer not to.
Yep.
And yeah. I think the fear of permanence is definitely something that kind of sticks with our generation.
That's a good term, fear of permanence.
Yeah.
Well, we have nothing to be afraid of because nothing is permanent.
That's true.
How's your band doing? What have you guys been doing?
We're doing well. We've taken a step back.
The Reverend Few?
The Reverend Few. There was a movie. We're not going to say the name of the movie, but no one had said that name of that movie ever before that people confuse it with, and I'm like, I don't know. Anyway, The Reverend Few.
Got it. No, I think I know what the movie is.
Yeah,
that shall remain unnamed.
Anyone with their headphones on can guess, but don't screw it up. But The Reverend Few, so we've been playing around Austin. Since then, we've toured back to Chicago once or twice, and that's all been wonderful. And it's a part of one of these struggles is how do we get into the studio? How do we do our funding, get our funding for the record to be able to do it properly, and not just like a DIY, put something out, just get it done. And dancing that line.
So let me push back on that. So why not just DIY and put it out there? Like, perfect's the enemy of ship, right?
Yeah, exactly right. What's better than perfect is done.
Yeah.
We have done. So what we did an EP, and we did a DIY EP, and we like it. And then local regional radio station picked it up, started playing it, and we went, oh no, like we wished that this could be radio ready, and people already want those songs, people already want to play them, and we're going like, there's sonically we didn't think that that's where that would go. And so now we're going like, well, it looks like we need to be in the big boy club. We gotta get really good quality, and to continue moving this forward, so we can be proud of the thing to go, yes, now that should be on national radio. And so it's harder to push the things where you go like, we saw the limits of those recordings, and now they're breaching the recording themselves are breaching the limits where we saw them. And now we're going, okay, well, we need the next level of product.
But what are those limits? So, I mean, the Beatles recorded their stuff on equipment that now would be considered museum quality stuff. And the Black Keys put out their first, Thick Freakness and Rubber Factory were done on, we were talking earlier about the Tascam 388 console, which is basically like a, basic quarter-inch tape, 8-track. And self-produced it, right? And you went to Berklee College of Music, so you're a very accomplished musician. Your significant other, Paige Chaucy, who's a lead singer, is an extraordinary singer. and you guys have everything it takes. So what is that next level, and how is that? I mean, how is your perception of that next level holding you back?
Oh, that's a great question, and it's a conversation I literally just had the other day with my friend Joe George. Most people know him as Joe from Reverb. Hi, I'm Joe from Reverb. He's one of my dear friends, and we're sitting in my garage where my recording stuff is, and I was playing him some demos. He was playing me some stuff, and we were talking about that very idea of like the DIY thing, and where is the line of good enough to release, and is that your personal line? Is it a line of a collection of the musicians or people that you work with, that you play with? Like, where is that line? And I think it depends on the project. In the Reverent Few, like, I really crave creatively for these recordings. I really crave specific types of sounds, like specific drum tones and specific textures that I think will make these songs live the way that I think they should live. And the last recordings we did were good, but they did not embody the vision of what I think the songs ought to be.
But here's the thing, too. You told me this.
Mm-hmm.
I put out my EP, I put out my EP a year and 2 months ago, and I recorded it like more like a year and a half plus ago. And I told you the same thing about my EP. I'm like, man, I'm embarrassed to hear it now. I'm playing so much better. There's so many more ideas. And that was your response. You told me that's the game for everybody. Everybody feels like the last thing they recorded was not what they're capable of now.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the difference now? And so I'm just trying to break through. The reason I'm pushing so much on this is because I also struggle with the same thing, right?
Yeah, we all do. I mean, that's the whole conversation.
Yeah, the blank page and pushing through those limitations that we put on ourselves. And what are the things that you found, can help you? Let's maybe talk about breakthroughs you've had at times when you were like, oh yeah, this is something that, I mean, we could if you want to cuss, you can cuss. We can tag it as explicit. So.
Well, shit. Yeah. Okay. It made me think of this thing. One of my college roommates, great drummer, Charlie Giesige. We're in college. We're having a good old time. And I looked over to him one day and just said, Charlie, you swear a lot. And he goes, shit ass fuck damn. Never let me. It's like, I laugh every time I think about that.
All right, I guess we're tagging this episode as explicit.
Explicit. So as far as the breakthroughs are concerned, the challenges that I run into is sort of being, and I think a lot of people do, is living your life as you live it, and living it day to day, and getting done what you need to get done that day, and just get through that day. And you might have lofty dreams about the long term, and then you have your immediate goals of the immediacy, and taking the time to discuss these. Like, you and I have had conversations that I'm like, I go home and I'm like, I'm so on fire, inspired right now to go do things and to accomplish that next level and to let go of the things. So I think that the conversation itself is the part of breaking through that wall. Like for me, Paige and I live together, we make music together, we play gigs, we make money, we pay bills, we hang out with our friends. So our whole worlds are kind of like we're running side by side in most of these activities. And it's really challenging for us to have these sort of hard-edged conversations with each other because we do so much together, the digestion of that or in the perspective, having those conversations all the time feels very you feel kind of beat down when you go like, oh man, we need to do this and we need to do that and we need to do this. Well, like when I talk to somebody who's outside of what we do, and this is an idea that you brought up to me at one point, being able to talk to anybody that is not so invested in that world gives you some perspective of going like, well, you could ask the question. You can ask the question with no attachment to it of, so why don't you just do that?
Yeah. And I do. And I actually seek that out too because I don't see myself as particularly accomplished. Some other people have told me that they think that I've done some things. I feel like I'm, I have this constant feeling of I'm not doing enough. Which is probably one of my flaws, right? Like I'm just never done. I'm always like, what else can I do? How else can I do it? And how can I do better? Almost to a fault in the sense of like, And I have a council of people, and people that I seek out very honest advice from, and I'm like, okay, help me triangulate this. Like here's the thing, and I want to make sure that I'm keeping it real for myself, but also not go too far the other way, right? So, and do you have those people too that you seek out that are outside of what you do that help you? Because this is something that small business owners face all the time, and small business people, right?
Yeah.
Is this like, when you're both executing and you're judging how well the execution's going,
Yeah.
things can get confusing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and it's why, and it's something we talked about recently, it's why some people, when they make records, they want a producer. They want someone to stand outside and be an objective view of what's going on, and to be that voice of reason beyond getting in your own way. Like that's what I think the mark of a great producer is: keep you in line with the real vision of what's going on. And as far as whether or not I have people that are those voices, like absolutely. And sometimes Paige is that voice. Most of the time, Paige is the voice of like trying to get me not to be in my own way. But that role in someone's life, like we're so intertwined that we can't constantly be working on those things all the time. We have different roles for each other in our lives. So like you and I talk, and you go and you ask me flat out, like, hey, why are you not doing this? And I'm like, I do not have a good answer for that. And because it's not in, the main answer usually is because it's not in the forefront of my mind to do it that directly, that immediately. I let other things, like, oh, but this and maybe that, and maybe someday, like trying to put all that out the window and just go like, why not just do it now? Just like this podcast, like You're like, let's do a podcast. Yes, done. Or my friend Joe that was in town, I'm saying he and I were talking about social media, and he's like, yeah, just like trying to get pictures on Instagram, like it's kind of a weird thing to do. And we talked about like trying to eliminate the thought of it, the worry of it, like not letting it invade. You just go, all right, hey, let's get a picture. Okay, click, done. Like don't put so much energy into it. Like take care in it, but don't let it suck away your attention or your energy. Just like just get it done and move on from it.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, that's really cool. And it's funny just hanging out in Austin, getting a couple cool photos and going like, man, he's absolutely right. That worked out nice.
Yeah. Actually, I have a picture of you and I that we took in the backyard of the Skylark Lounge, just kind of like that, right?
Oh, yeah. I love that photo. That's a great one.
Yeah. What it says in the background, money can't buy life.
Yeah.
From Bob Marley.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Good times.
Yeah. So what are some of the things so you have broken through many times in your life because you have accomplished a lot of things. You have a successful band in Austin. You went to Berklee College of Music. You also have a creative business mind. What are some of the things that have allowed you to break through and kind of helped you get out of your own way in the past?
It seems a little silly. I'm not very good at finishing books, but I'm really good at starting them. And I like and documentaries are sort of in the same camp a little bit. Things that are inspiring, hearing about and seeing about people, other people that are successful, and sort of trying to absorb what those things are. Things like finding that inspiring podcast. Like, it's not to be like a sales pitch for this kind of thing, but even being here and having an opportunity to, in this moment, confront those challenges and realize that they're there, and then allowing them to go away. And I think about the times at which I've made the largest strides in progress are also the times at which I was the least worried about the progress. My personal value as a person or a human being or a musician or a character, none of that was in front of me when I've made the most progress. Yeah. The moments that I let those sort of drive my personal value, if I let that drive my moment, then that ends up being a distraction from being most efficient at that moment. Yeah. So seeking out
in
things.
Some ways, I mean, I'm gonna date myself a little bit with this analogy, but you remember Super Mario Brothers?
Of course.
And you had there's this like little cloud.
Yeah.
that's angry at you, and it's coming at you,
Yeah.
and it gets faster as long as you're running away from it.
Mm-hmm.
But the moment you look at it, the cloud's like, oh, no, I'm just hanging out here. I'm not chasing you anymore. I'm not going. No, nothing to see here. And then you turn around, start running again, and the cloud starts chasing you.
Mm-hmm.
I find like a lot of these barriers that we put for ourselves are kind of like that cloud.
Mm-hmm.
As long as you look them down and acknowledge them, and you're like, all right, fine. Like they're not even a thing.
Yeah,
It's just when we try to run away from them that they end up chasing us down and like scaring the crap out of us.
Yeah, yeah. That's sort of true. Yeah, when you really do, clear the air and look at what it is, the answer is usually pretty simple. I mean, overall, like, do you want to do a podcast? Hit record and start talking. And that's advice that friends give me all the time, or colleagues, or whatever. Like, just do it. Why you?
So what are the things that you're looking to do next to take your project to the next level? Because your band has evolved since the last time we spoke, right? There are different members to the band.
Yeah,
and also there are different. So what are your goals, and what are the things that you want to do? I mean, we'll do a follow-up episode a year from now.
Yeah,
and
so we should get on the calendar now, because
exactly. Yeah. But what are the things that you want to do? And I mean, I can share with you some of the things that I want to do too. But
yeah. Getting the next level of recordings in a format that is shareable is the next big hurdle. And in the last, let's say, couple months, some big new changes in how we view what that process looks like has changed. How are we going to make that a reality? So better recordings, like a feeling like we've completed some of these songs that we go, they're close, they're not done. I cannot wait to just have to feel like, yes, here is this is how it should be. There you go, public, so that we can move on to the next thing. That's a big thing.
But more specifically, like, I mean, what does that mean? Do you have a timeline that you're setting for yourself? It's like, what? Because the challenge with that, right, is that
you put me on the spot now.
I mean, I'm just helping you out because
and
this is what people do for me too.
Yeah.
It's easy to say I just want to get the songs in a format that are digestible for the public.
Okay, so
what does that mean for you in terms of your specifics? Like your next steps. Because
okay, so I'll get a little more specific. So next week we have a meeting with the engineer, possibly producer.
Yeah.
And we're gonna iron out when we meet up, we're gonna talk about, like, what does that look like. We're gonna tell him our budget and our goals. And we've already had a lot of conversations with him about this. But we're gonna go, this is our budget, these are our goals. How close can we get? And figure out what kind of compromises we have to make, or if we have to make compromises to get what we really need out of this grouping. And in that meeting, we're going to book the dates of the recording session, and depending on how that agreement looks, we're going to figure out what we need out of the band itself that's going to play, doing some pre-production to make sure that those songs are ready. And then we're going to get there and do that, hopefully in the next, realistically, probably month and a half from that meeting is depending on when he has available in the studio, because that's kind of the next bound thing. I've definitely been putting it off, being like, well, I've got all these things, I don't know if I can move. Like, forget that. I'm just booking the dates, and I'll work it out from there. So
that's another thing too, is in self-imposing deadlines, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You know what? In addition to this, I keep having conversations with this friend of mine that I'm just going to say now, you should have him on the podcast, because he's brilliant. He's great at what he does, and he's kind of graduated to bigger companies. But I think that some of what he says might apply. It's a guy named Josh Applebaum, who was one of my students when I was in Chicago, and now he works in. He was apparel stuff. So he's a high up in apparel design and things, and we've met. He's come to Austin for some meetings, and we've hung out, and he's so passionate about what he does and so good at what he does. So we've talked about what does that mean for a band? What is it?
What does he exactly do?
So you know what? I'm not sure what his title is.
Okay.
He just moved to a different position and has been featured in a couple of publications. Well, you know, behind the scenes. Well, I'll fill you in on him. But
Sure.
but long story short, he's a really inspiring guy, and he's one of those people that he's like.
But what's his business again? Sorry, I missed that.
He works for an apparel company, so
Yeah, but
like
what
shirts,
kind of apparel?
shirts, hats, things like that. And,
Okay.
and we talk about. He's like, man, I love what you do. You know, if you have any questions about what we do, and but not in a sales way, in like a friend way. And he asks me the same kind of questions you do about what's your next step, what does it look like, and how did that. It's really. It's great to have people that are not within the music industry talk to you about the process. Because when you're in the music industry, everyone thinks they know what they're talking about in the music industry. And especially when you talk to old timers, they'll tell you, oh, well, it used to be like this and it was better at this time and you should have done this and that. But those old timers are not always the top of the heap when it comes to current progress. What do you do now? How do you make now successful? It's really interesting and great historical perspective, but you know, having people go like, oh, that's great. If you want this kind of thing, I know how to do this and that.
So what are the conversations that you have with him that help you?
His expertise is in apparel. So t-shirt weight design, what do people actually wear? What is your audience focused on? What kind, like his expertise are in that. So his excitement is around that. And then we talk about the same things we do. Like, what are your next steps? What's your next timeline? I can't wait to hear the next thing. What are you going to do? You know, What does that look like?
Is your goal to make music your main form of livelihood, or do you want to live music as a lifestyle? And like, I mean, how do you think about that? Because we've talked about this before, both on the podcast and privately.
That's a great question. I've recently, we're still kind of working out details, but I may be doing some tours with another band as a sideman guitarist, doing some travel for that, some international travel. It's still in the works, so I don't want to jinx it. But that would lead towards more being a player as the source of my income, and as opposed to working at shops, doing gigs, regional, local gigs, and doing lessons. So there's a potential shift in where the income comes from, and the goal is to get some experience, be able touring. And I'd love to be able to translate it into the Reverent Few. Whether or not the Reverent Few is to be trying to be the biggest band ever so we can make all this money to be able to live off of, that would be nice. But
I mean, you guys are really, really good.
Well, thank you.
I see. No. I mean, I'm not saying this because you're my friend. I see a lot of bands, and I'm a student of. Well, especially the blues, and you guys are sort of, you guys have a lot of blues influences, but you guys would go way beyond the blues. In my opinion, you're one of the, best 10 guitar players in Austin right now, and Paige is a spectacular vocalist. You guys have good songs. You guys have good rhythm. Your shows get, packed. You guys play all over Austin. So, yeah, I mean, you guys have it.
I think that, thank you. I think that when you think about long term, you go like, what's sustainable? And there's plenty of Austin musicians that play regionally and make a fine living and maybe have some supplemental income other ways, whether they have a studio or they teach lessons or they do whatever. One of the main goals we want to do is we want to put out some good records and that we're proud of, and we want to be able to get enough momentum to be able to do a national tour that's not like, a couple dirty people in a van. We want to go a little bit beyond that, and feel like we really have shared what we have with the world. Mm-hmm. And with the changing technology, there's a possibility that we could still play regionally, locally, and still share it with the world, but like travel is an important thing. So right. we want, like, our goals are, and maybe this is a mistake, our goals are not so much financial as they are experiential. And if we've got to stick it out in certain ways to be able to have these experiences of travel and sharing, then, we're willing to make those. But,
Well, by the way, I think if they're your goals and that's what's important to you, then you shouldn't be ashamed of those goals. Like that's great. Like if your goals are experiential and that's how you want to live your life. I don't know. Nobody gets a do-over, and everybody that's it's your role, right?
Yeah, and I think that there's in certain ways we figured out how to do that. When we get tour back to Chicago, and we know how to do it without losing money, and that's cool, and without too much struggle. And the goal, I think, is to kind of keep chipping away at that. Like Paige and I, when we met, just found out just about 8 years ago now. We both considered ourselves lifers in being musicians. Not that has to fully. We don't have to fully identify. We are musicians and musicians only. Some people are like that. Some people enjoy that experience, and for us, like, we will always be musicians, but that is not the limit of our interests or our abilities. So I think we're okay with the idea that things may evolve, but we're always going to be existing in this musician world. We live here, and it's like if if I work at guitar shops and that part of it works out well, that's totally cool. It's a tough question. Like, what does your whole world look like in the future? Like,
sure.
Yeah. And I think the answer is whatever you want to make it.
Yeah, nobody has shit figured out. Everybody goes, makes it up as they go, right?
Yeah. Well, and like there are a lot of people that, not a lot, but there are some people that they know what they want, and it makes it almost easier to go, boom, I just keep chipping away until that pathway like reveals itself because I know exactly where I want to go. Like that's easy. But not that many people have that.
Yeah, but you know what's funny about that? I think there's a perception. The farther away you are from that person, the easier it is to say that person has that.
Yeah.
But then you get close to them and you talk to them, you get to know them. They're just as confused and lost as you are.
That's totally true.
And to other people on the outside, they're like, oh my God, that person really knows what they're doing. They're chipping away at their thing, and that's their one thing. And you'd sit down with them, with some Colorado whiskey and some Austin bubbly water on a Friday evening, and it's not that clear, right?
I think that I think that in the industry of music is a great example, but talking about small businesses, if you sell pottery and you love pottery and it seems like that's your world, that's your thing that you do, and it should, like, I don't think it's that different than wanting to be a musician. Like, I think that the skill sets translate just evenly, and I don't know, man. I see other people in other businesses and like, wow, they're really into having an art store, and it seems like they've put their whole lives into that. And like you're saying, you meet them, you talk to them, and you go, oh wow, everyone's got the same kind of like wanderlust.
We're 100 and what, 100 and I don't know. I lost count episodes of. In the introduction to this episode, I'm going to say exactly what episode this is, but there's a pattern of people. Like, I have had people on the podcast that are exactly like that, and they struggle just like everybody else, right? So I don't think one of my favorite things to say and believe is your reward for overcoming a challenge is just a different, sometimes bigger challenge.
Yeah. I had that realization. Like, there's a lot of musicians that are like, oh, once this happens, then we'll be set. Once I get signed, this will be set. Once we have an international tour, then we'll be set. No. And like the thing I've learned, especially in the business world, is that the more success you have, the harder it gets.
Yeah, because it's a complex adaptive. Like, you get more complication and more variables. And those variables are not linear. It's not like one more variable adds one step of complication because of the amount of existing prior complications.
Exactly.
That variable interacts with every single one of them, so it's actually exponential. So you get more variables, and shit gets more complicated and more difficult in a lot of different ways.
Absolutely. And as soon as you think you get that cush gig that's going to be the easy sailing thing, it gets super complicated.
Yeah.
I had a friend of mine who worked with some huge star, some stupid huge star. And he was a technician for him, and he was like, yeah, the guy's schedule is like he wakes up at 4 a.m, goes for a run, hops in a limo, goes to the airport, hops on a plane, goes to wherever they're going to play next, has a radio show, does some handshake interview things, gets some breakfast, heads to another thing, does a meet and greet. Like, the schedule is maddening, and people aspire to this stardom thing, but in order to maintain it, the schedule becomes so complicated that you wonder, like, how do they even have the energy to do the thing that we love them for?
Stardom is actually a completely different. I mean, I'm happy to go into that, but stardom is a completely different. So Jim Carrey is on record saying that I wish everybody get to be rich and famous so they could figure out, so they could experience and live how that's not the answer. Right now.
Oh, that's cool.
He gets a lot of backlash for that, and people saying, yeah, easy for you to say, because you can pay your gas bill, and like you don't have, like, your kid's not sick, like all the, like, people who have real, everyday problems, like, look at him and be like, you rich asshole, you're saying this. But I think what he's saying does have some, a lot of value, in the sense that, like, being rich and famous is not the answer to answering, like, the existential, humanity
it's like, that doesn't mean you're going to be at peace with yourself. That doesn't mean that you're going to go to bed happy every night. You know, and those are the things. Those are the as much as it sounds nice to have a really successful business that makes a ton of money, sometimes what that takes to get there screws up a whole lot of the other things in the process. And finding a balance in that life, a lot of people don't find that until later in life. They go, oh, well, crap, I wish I would have spent more time with my kids, or I wish I would have taken a break from this instead of doing that. But we get into this momentum of we must be working all the time, and I think it falls in, you can still be efficient and find the joy in the work, and then also find the joy in the things that are not work, like that. I mean, there's all sorts of, like, there's the 4-Hour Work Week book that's that plays on that. I've not read all of that one either, as many books that I've only started.
One of the quotes that comes to mind, and this guy is screwed up in a lot of ways, but as a lot of artists are. Charles Bukowski said that find what you love and let it kill you.
Yeah, I think that. Yeah, that sounds awful. Like, it sounds...
Depends on how you define kill you. Like, what if kill you
is just like the implication of kill you is not a pleasant experience.
No, but what if it means... Okay, well, I mean, the way that I read that is like, okay, find what you love and then pour yourself into that, so it burns your soul and such with such intensity that's where you live.
I think that, like in every great quote, there's inspiring things about it, but if you pick it apart too hard, everybody's still going to interpret it. They're going to interpret it as applied to their own lives. And if you found something that is joyous, that could be a really exciting notion of find what you love and do it till it kills you. Like that could be exciting. Or to people who don't have that, it could be terrifying to be like, I don't even know what I would die for. I have no idea. Like, I can't even conceptualize that.
Yeah.
And
that
that's
in itself is a powerful thought.
Yeah.
What's your favorite song, your favorite thing to play that inspires you, that you just feel like when you play it, it just moves you and like it helps you overcome some of these times that we're talking about?
Oh, those are always the toughest questions, like, as an artist. Typically, it would be an original song, because that's what we're seeking out. Or when you write, that's what you're looking for, is that song that, you can't do it. Right now, there's a song I wrote not too long ago called, so far working title, it's called Señorita. And I've been playing it at shows here and there. And it's a song I wrote after watching some video footage of Puerto Rico after the hurricane,
Yeah.
and I just saw some footage, and I was like, ugh, oh God, I can't imagine what it would be like to live there. And then I tried to imagine what it was like to live there, and I wrote this song sort of around that.
Yeah.
Like, what was it like? What would it like to like have lived there, have a house there, and lived, and then something like that happens, and how does your world around you respond? That's one that kind of has been moving me lately.
Yeah.
And
So over 100 episodes in, why don't we do it first? Why don't you grab that vintage Gibson from the wall that you just helped me get?
Are you gonna make me
few
play a
weeks
song?
ago, and you should play that song.
all right, why not?
Yeah, let's grab it over there and
All right.
get that bench over there and do it.
All right,
right.
Let's do it. Oh man, God, man, this guitar is incredible. I hope this bubbly water and this whiskey doesn't screw me up too bad.
Probably not the bubbly water.
Probably not. Both delicious. I miss my home, Señorita, but there's nothing but rubble there. At the top of the stairs is the door to my room. Well, at least there's sunshine up there. Take a breath, take a walk, take a raincoat if you go. When the wind came along, it took away my home and all I'd ever known. It took my roof, took my car, took my pictures of what I'd seen. Well, upstairs became down, and as I look around, I see my clothes will never be clean. I miss my home, Señorita, but there's nothing but rubble there. And at the top of the stairs is the door to my room. Well, at least there's sunshine up there. As the dark takes all the light, illumination won't take the night, 'cause the power lines are crossing the street. And my neighbor says to me, there's only trouble as far as I can see. But I hope that there's hope at the end of my rope, or at least across the sea. I miss my home, Señorita, but there's nothing but rubble there. And at the top of the stairs was the door to my room. Well, at least there's sunshine up there. The wind can whip or hoist a kite, chill the darkness, cool the light, can give you power or take it away. So build your mansion, build a wall, build a tower, watch it fall, 'cause there's nothing that's stronger than what you can't see. It's my home, Señorita, but there's nothing but rubble there. And at the top of the stairs was the door to my room. Well, at least there's sunshine up there. And it's my home, Señorita, but there's nothing but rubble there. At the top of the stairs was the door to my room. Well, at least there's sunshine up there. And at the top of the stairs was the door to my room. Well, at least there's sunshine up there.
Man, I got goosebumps and a knot in my throat. It's nothing. Was it nothing stronger than that? What you can't see.
Yeah. It just kind of.
That's amazing.
It was one of those songs that just kind of, when the moment came, I didn't let anything get in the way. I just did not stop till it was done, and then it was done. And I was like, well, there it is.
That's incredibly powerful. Nick Boettcher, it's been a pleasure and honor to have you on the podcast. I look forward to having you on the show again.
Oh man, thanks for having me back.
You're a legend. I'll talk to you soon.
All right.
Small business war stories. Small businesses are the soul of America. And this is where they tell their stories. I am your host, Pablo Fuentes.